I slammed into the training mat so hard that the air vanished from my lungs, and before I could even understand what had happened, my martial arts instructor had completely neutralized every escape I knew. The entire class had fallen silent. My wrists were controlled, my shoulders were pinned, and every reckless ounce of confidence I had carried into the dojo dissolved in a single humiliating moment. Then she looked down with calm, patient eyes and quietly asked if I wanted her to get off now. It wasn't a challenge, and it wasn't mockery. It was a question that forced me to make a choice. I could admit defeat, or I could cling to the pride that had been destroying my life for years. That moment on the mat became the beginning of a journey I never expected, one that changed far more than the way I fought. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us that true strength comes from the heart, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing inspiring stories to life. Until that afternoon, I believed strength was measured by victories. I believed the strongest person in any room was the one nobody could defeat. Looking back now, I realize I had built my entire identity around proving myself to everyone else because deep inside I never felt good enough. Ever since high school, failure had haunted me. I had dropped out of college after struggling with anxiety, bounced between jobs that never lasted, and watched childhood friends build careers while I convinced myself I simply needed to become tougher. Martial arts seemed like the perfect answer. I imagined that if I became physically strong enough, all the insecurity, disappointment, and loneliness would disappear. Instead, they followed me into every training session. The dojo itself was nothing like I expected. There were no loud speeches, no intimidating decorations, and no promises of becoming unbeatable. The room was simple, spotless, and peaceful. Every student bowed before entering. Everyone respected each other regardless of age or experience. At the center of it all stood our instructor, a woman whose reputation stretched far beyond the city. She had won national tournaments years earlier but rarely spoke about her achievements. She focused instead on discipline, patience, and humility. Many newcomers underestimated her calm personality until they experienced her incredible skill firsthand. I was one of those newcomers. During my first few weeks, I learned techniques quickly and received compliments from other beginners. Those compliments became fuel for my ego. Every successful throw convinced me I was progressing faster than everyone else. Instead of listening carefully, I started believing I already understood the lessons. Whenever the instructor corrected my posture or reminded me to slow down, I nodded politely while secretly assuming she was being overly cautious. My impatience grew stronger with every class. One evening she announced that everyone would participate in controlled sparring sessions designed to expose weaknesses rather than determine winners. I hardly listened to the explanation because I was already imagining myself impressing the entire class. My early matches against fellow beginners went well enough to reinforce my confidence. Then my name was called alongside hers. The room suddenly became quiet. Several experienced students exchanged knowing glances, almost as if they already understood what was about to happen. I stepped onto the mat determined to prove that my confidence was justified. I attacked aggressively from the opening movement, trying to overwhelm her with speed and force. She barely seemed to move. Every strike missed. Every attempt to grab her failed. She redirected my momentum so effortlessly that I felt like I was fighting the air itself. Then came the moment that changed everything. I rushed forward one last time without thinking. In less than a heartbeat, my balance disappeared. My feet left the floor, and I landed flat on my back. Before I could recover, she had secured complete control using flawless technique instead of brute strength. She wasn't hurting me. She wasn't embarrassing me intentionally. She was demonstrating that experience, patience, and precision would always overcome reckless confidence. As I lay there staring at the ceiling, unable to escape, she calmly asked whether I wanted her to release the hold. For a few painful seconds my pride begged me to keep struggling, but my body already knew the truth. I finally admitted defeat. She immediately let go, helped me to my feet, bowed respectfully, and thanked me for the practice. There was no celebration, no criticism, and no humiliation. Only respect. That simple act confused me more than losing ever could. I expected lectures or ridicule. Instead, she treated me exactly the same as before. After class she quietly explained that martial arts was never about dominating other people. Every technique existed to protect life, not to satisfy the ego. She said the strongest students were usually those willing to admit when they needed to learn. Those words stayed with me all night. The following weeks became far more difficult than the physical training itself. I had to confront the uncomfortable truth that my greatest opponent wasn't standing across the mat. It lived inside my own mind. Every correction from the instructor reminded me how often my pride had prevented real improvement. Instead of trying to impress others, I began focusing on mastering the basics. Repeating simple movements thousands of times became strangely satisfying. Progress came slowly, but it felt genuine for the first time. Life outside the dojo remained challenging. Bills continued piling up. My temporary job offered little security, and my father still questioned whether martial arts was wasting my time. There were evenings when exhaustion tempted me to quit everything. Yet every time I entered the dojo, I found a place where effort mattered more than status. Nobody cared how much money I earned or what mistakes I had made in the past. They cared only that I showed up ready to improve. Months passed, and the instructor gradually trusted me with helping newer students during warm-ups. At first I didn't understand why she chose me. Then I realized she wasn't rewarding talent. She was rewarding growth. She had seen the difference between the arrogant newcomer who wanted admiration and the student who finally understood humility. One rainy afternoon, a frightened teenage boy walked into the dojo with his mother. He had been bullied for years and barely made eye contact with anyone. Watching him reminded me painfully of the person I used to be beneath all the false confidence. During practice he constantly apologized whenever he made mistakes. I recognized the fear because I had carried it myself for most of my life. Instead of teaching him flashy techniques, I repeated the same patient guidance my instructor had once given me. I encouraged him to celebrate small improvements instead of comparing himself with others. Week after week his confidence slowly grew. Months later he entered a local tournament. Although he didn't win the championship, he completed every match without giving up. When he stepped off the mat smiling proudly beside his mother, I realized something extraordinary. Helping someone else believe in themselves felt more rewarding than any medal I could ever earn. The instructor watched quietly from across the room. After everyone had left, she thanked me for becoming the kind of student who lifted others instead of trying to stand above them. In that moment I finally understood why she had never tried to crush my confidence on the day she pinned me to the mat. She had only tried to remove the pride hiding the frightened person underneath. Years later, our dojo organized a community self-defense program for people recovering from difficult experiences. Survivors of bullying, domestic violence, and personal loss trained together, discovering that courage often begins with simply showing up. Seeing those classes filled me with gratitude. Martial arts had never truly been about fighting. It had become a language of healing, resilience, and hope. Whenever new students arrived carrying the same arrogance or insecurity I once carried, I smiled quietly because I knew their journey was only beginning. Many of them would eventually experience the same humbling lesson I had received. Some would leave, unwilling to confront themselves. Others would stay and discover that true strength grows from patience, compassion, and discipline rather than pride. Looking back, the most important moment of my entire martial arts journey wasn't earning a higher belt or winning a competition. It was lying on that training mat after being completely outmatched and realizing that surrendering my ego was the first real victory of my life. That single question asked by my instructor became the turning point that transformed failure into wisdom and embarrassment into purpose. Sometimes the moments that feel like our greatest defeats become the foundation of our greatest growth. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that real strength comes from humility, kindness, and perseverance, please support the channel by liking this video, sharing it with friends and family, subscribing for more inspiring stories, and letting us know your thoughts. Before the ending, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment telling us about a moment when failure became the beginning of something better in your life. Life has a remarkable way of teaching its greatest lessons through the moments we wish had never happened. What once felt like humiliation became the memory I treasure most because it taught me that true champions are not those who never fall, but those who rise with greater wisdom, greater compassion, and a heart ready to help others stand again. And every time I step onto a training mat today, I silently remember that unforgettable afternoon when one simple question marked the beginning of a completely different life.